Morning, everybody. I am Bob Sanborn, and I am President and CEO of Children at Risk. And we're excited to have this, our annual STEM summit that we've been doing for many, many years. This year, full steam ahead, creating equitable pathways to STEM careers. We're excited for you to join us. We have so many great people with us today to talk as well. But before we get into that, just a couple of housekeeping items, a couple of points of information that we want to make sure that you understand. Use the Q&A, very important. Also, we're going to be giving away, because of HP, we're going to be giving away a lot of computers and tech gear during the conference. We'll be letting people, 8 HP laptops are going to be available today. So we want to make sure that you guys have that chance to get one of those. And I guess we have a bonus, 2 additional laptops for our event feedback survey. Also, we're doing we're doing continuing education through Prairie View, our good buddies over at Prairie View A&M. So we're doing some continuing education. So if you're interested in that, you do have to stay for the entirety of the summit, but there'll be notes for you. Ensure you're able to verify that you're here today. Take a moment to write down the screen name and the email address of the Zoom account you used to join the webinar this morning. All right. And so we have to thank Shell first and foremost, because Shell has been our big sponsor for many, many years on this. So they're our primary sponsor, but also want to thank AIG, HP, Amazon, Prairie View, all for helping us out. And the great staff at Children at Risk and the team at the Texas Family Leadership Council, want to thank them. And Bree Derry, who's on today, it's her last day, and she has been the queen of all of our summits at Children at Risk, Texas Family Leadership Council, for the last couple of years. So we're going to miss her. Thank you very much, Bree. And then a final thank you to our friends at Shell. Let's look at some of the data on very quickly. Since the pandemic, we know that public education has suffered immensely. We've seen significant decline, but that's especially true when we look at some of the STEM subjects we're going to cover today. About 5 months behind most US students, some estimated to be much more than that. And specifically, when we look at kids that are coming from low-income families, kids from underrepresented groups, minority students, we're looking at 6 to 7 months of decline in STEM subjects. And so this has already been a tough area for kids coming out of low-income families, and it continues to be that area. And when we look specifically at subjects, some subjects like the reading arts and languages have not suffered as much, but algebra and biology, huge decline. So these are key things when we look at STEM as well. The other thing is, I wanted to point out, just for Texas purposes, we're expected to have the second highest percentage of STEM careers in the future, huge numbers, yet and we look at this divide between this gender divide, about 45% of Texas men have a science or engineering background, while only 26% of women do. And so we see still this big divide when it comes to STEM men and women. And then the final thing I want to talk about is one of the things that we'll see throughout the day today, and that we want to draw your attention to, is that key concerns, equity. When we look at STEM, we're just not seeing the equity that we need to see. Guillermo is going to be up next, and he's out of California. I'm here in Texas. When we look at California and Texas, 25% of all the children born in America are born in those 2 states. And when we look at that population, about 70% of all those kids born in California and Texas, children of color. And so, and the number of children born in low-income families is about 60% plus in those states. So equity becomes very concerning, especially because those are the states where we have most of the STEM careers. And so this needs to be something that we continue to look at, is equity in STEM. Scalability, we're going to hear about a lot of really interesting programs today. How scalable are they, and how do we get them up to scale to make sure that they're impacting all the students that we want to have impact? Policy is something we're not talking as much about today, but it's very important. What can we do at state and federal legislative levels to create policy for equity in STEM and more STEM opportunities? One of the things that we see in a lot of state legislatures is that they're not talking so much about public education reform, but they are talking about STEM. And how can we lead that discussion So we're investing more in our public schools, investing more in STEM, and really creating that workforce that we need to be, that we need to have for all these STEM careers to keep our country competitive. And then finally, collaboration. We can't do all of these things without collaboration. And we're going to need to collaborate on advocacy. And I'm especially thinking about the private sector. One of the conversations we've been having is how do we get the private sector to really fund advocacy around STEM? And so often the private sector, when they think of philanthropy, they think about programs, small programs, individual direct service programs. But I think it's very important that we collaborate so that the private sector is working together with advocacy groups like Children at Risk to really move STEM forward. So those are some of the things we want you to keep in mind as we move forward this morning. Let's go to our keynote, though, for the morning. I want to introduce Guillermo Diaz. Guillermo is the chairman of the Hispanic IT Executive Council. He's also the founder and CEO of Conectado. And one of the things that Guillermo is out of the Silicon Valley, so we're excited to have Guillermo here with us. And he's out of the Silicon Valley, and we want to make sure that we get sort of his take on STEM. Guillermo, are you there? And I know Guillermo's coming. He was just on for a second, so let's see where. There you go. There, Guillermo. How you doing today, Guillermo? By the way,
I'm good. How are you? Can you see me okay?
Yeah, we can see you fine, and we're ready for you to screen share and take it away, Guillermo. We're excited to have you here.
All right. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, Bob, for that great introduction, and thanks for sharing some of that data. And it's really, part of the reason why, when I was asked to come on this, as a keynote, I was like, I am there. And why I am there is, I am that person that came from the low-income communities. I'm that person that, came from, a family that never, hadn't had a college degree in the family at all. So I am this chairman of an organization called the Hispanic Technology Executive Council, and also the CEO and founder of an organization called Conectado, which is focused on how we bring up the next generation, how we provide a platform that will accelerate opportunities for those that are underrepresented, like us, like me. But I wasn't always that person. There's a story, and we all have a story. And I want to share a little bit of that story with you all, because there's a story, and then there's a story behind the story, which, I grew up in a place called Pueblo, Colorado, which, is a great place, but I grew up on the east side, and I guess the east side of anywhere is, always an interesting place. But what I found was that we didn't have a lot of money. So my outlet was to join the military, US Navy. And what I learned in the US Navy was this thing called technology. I learned about technology. I learned about telecommunications and security, which I had no idea what that was. But thankfully, as I left the Navy, I landed up in this place called Silicon Valley, the heart of tech. Now, the heart of tech, I was one of the only, as I looked around, I was one of the only brown people of color that I could see in technology. I was also a veteran. So why I'm doing Conectado, why I'm doing this platform, is because I remember what it felt like to be that person. I remember what it felt like to be the only one in the room. And I vowed, sort of unconsciously at the time, that I wanted to make sure that other people didn't feel that way. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if you fast forward, I grew my career in the Silicon Valley. And I worked for large companies like Silicon Graphics, where I ran the worldwide networks for Silicon Graphics. And then I got recruited by this, at the time, a smaller company called Cisco Systems. Cisco Systems is now the largest networking company in the world, $50 billion company. And I grew in that company to be the chief information officer. So people always ask me, it's like, gee, how did you become, how did you break through to the C levels? How did you, you become that person? And, I talk about the story of how, I learned about technology. I learned about communications. I learned about how we can connect. And when as I grew my career, most of the people didn't look like me, but that ability to interact and work with others of, around the world. And so that, that technology, but diverse perspective really helped accelerate my career. And so as I left Cisco Systems in February of 20, when this interesting dilemma was going on in the world called, COVID, called the coronavirus at the time, it presented an opportunity. That opportunity was, I had been working in technology. I'd been working in working with the diversity efforts, working in high tech, which is focused on how do we bring more underrepresented, especially Latinos, in executive roles in technology. So we think about this, the theme, we call it STEM. We call it now, actually, I love this, full steam ahead. And I want to share with you a couple of slides. And the slides are really the why we're doing what we're doing, because I strongly believe, and hopefully you all as well, believe that, as we learned in the last couple of years, every job will be tech powered. And technology has become part of every aspect of our life, how we live, how we work, how we play, how we learn. Overnight, we all lived in a technology world. We were all remote. We were all using digital tools. And if you walk through and look at, even in the airports today, you'll see coffee machines that are robots. You'll see robots delivering food. You'll see autonomous vehicles. Every job will have a tech component to it. But here's the challenge, especially with people of color. We need to change the story. And they always say, if you want to drive change, look in your own backyard first. So I did. And my backyard is Silicon Valley. If you look at the population of Silicon Valley, it's about 29% Latino. K through 12 students. And I'm just focusing on Latinos at the moment, but this represents people of color. Almost 40% of K through 12 students in the Silicon Valley are Latino, and the jobs are there. 500,000 unfilled tech jobs in the Silicon Valley, but yet, at best, we're only 4% representation in tech. So the real issue is, we're the consumers, large consumers. We all have a digital device. And if you look at the people, if you look at those underrepresented, we actually represent the highest index of digital usage. So we're the consumers, we're the gamers, we're the social media, navigators. But we need more makers. We need more of you. We need more creators. We need more owners. And that's why I am so passionate about what we're doing now, taking all of the background and my story to help those underrepresented so that we can have more makers, creators, and owners. And this is why, again, I love this notion of STEAM, because if you take a look at what's going on in the world today, especially the A, you take STEM and you add the A, which is art, at least from my perspective. Well, arts today use digital tools. So this platform that I am doing and working with the community to help build this platform really leverages that A. And it really starts to look something like this, where you can take that art, you can take those digital tools and create a metaverse. You can look at Web3. If you don't know about Web3, if you don't know about these kinds of technologies, take a look, because STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, these are all capabilities. And now you add the A and it's like, wow, what if we can actually build a community to help our community and use those skills, those artistic skills, to build something really cool. If you haven't heard about these types of technologies, go look at them, because the world is moving fast toward them. And being able to use and leverage the power of our community, the power that we're the consumers already. Now let's be the makers, the owners, the creators. And so that's what I really wanted to share with you. And this is why I'm so passionate about the story and my journey, the glory story. But there's the story of grit. There's a story of where I came from, and leveraging the power of that so that we can build this community. And I'm just so proud that you offered me the opportunity to share with you what we're doing, and to hopefully inspire you to go be that maker, creator, and owner. So Bob, back to you.
Thanks, Guillermo. One quick question. When you think about sort of the future for Latino children and STEM, I mean, obviously the data, when we look at the data in Texas and California, Silicon Valley, it's not where you and I would like it to be. But are you optimistic though about the future? And I mean, obviously we need to take action, but do you have some optimism?
I do. And why I do is, like, the focus like we're having today. And, I was just back to your point, I was in Houston, Texas 2 weeks ago, and I learned a few things. I learned that Houston, Texas is 46% Latino. And I also learned that there's this place in Houston, Texas called the ION. And the ION is now becoming a central place for the build of technology. When I was there, it's just starting to ramp up. But why I'm optimistic is I saw what was going on in that building. I saw that the people of color, not just Latinos, but the people of color, Indigenous, Black people, Latinos, all coming together to go, hey, we're the consumers. Now let's be the makers, right? And I think that this new world of Web3 and is ripe for us to really start to use our allies and prosper here.
Guillermo Diaz, muchísimas gracias, señor. Thank you so much.
Gracias.
All righty, very good. Hey, let's go on to our first panel. And Leolyn Bowen, who is the outreach manager over at code.org, is going to be moderating. And Leolyn, I'm going to let you introduce the panel, and good luck. Thank you so much for being here, by the way.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, everyone. Today, I am here with Christopher Hurt, the Science Department Chair from Tulsa Public Schools, as well as Dr. Heather Donyon, Clinical Associate Professor and Executive Director of the UH STEM Center, as well as the Executive Director for Science and Engineering, Fair of Houston, and UH Energy Fellow. Welcome, Chris and Heather.
Thank you for having us.
Same here.
Great. So I'm going to start with the question that everyone is watching this panel to learn more about. Why do you think there is such a decrease in STEM education achievement post-pandemic? Heather, I'll start with you.
Sure. No, thank you so much for the question. And that is absolutely on everybody's mind. Thank you for the introduction too of those particular statistics. We have to think that pre-COVID, we were, gearing and we were moving full steam ahead, correct, with trying to close the gap with all of our students, especially under-resourced, and being able to help support and undergird their success in STEM. However, then we kind of were thrown for a loop. So our academic normalcy for many of our students, our educators, our parents, are still being sought after. We're trying to regroup back from where we left off. And so we've had many severe staff shortages. We've had high rates of being absent. And that's not of the students, that's also of the teachers too, of the quarantines, the rolling schooling closures we have to think about. And just most recently too, we've had schools in North Texas that have actually committed to a 4-day week for school. And why? Because they're trying to compete with the larger school districts that are obtaining the teachers, because those larger school districts can provide a higher pay rate. And so there's a lot of discourse that we're trying to settle out once again. And the mental health is so pivotal for our students. We have higher rates of violence and misbehavior and concerns of lost instructional time. So coupled with all of these particular challenges, how do our teachers are able to succeed? Because ultimately, in my opinion, teachers make all careers happen for our students. And so it's a difficult journey at this time, and we have to be supportive of the teachers, the administrators, because those entities are doing heroic measures to maintain, but the education field needs to do better. We need to be able to help all of our students achieve. We need to be able to help them fill in the learning gap from COVID. We have policies in place, but yet how do we translate that to STEM? It's important for our students to have the foundation, but we have to move forward. We have to move that needle. We have to be able to take time to set the foundation and to be able to really understand how we can have a need to achieve the gap. And in doing so with our students, providing them with extra measures of what STEM is like, reaching out across other outside district areas with experts that we have here in the field can help us to be able to support our students being successful in STEM. However, we have to get back to the foundations and to the basics as well to be able to build upon them.
Great, thank you. Christopher?
Yeah. First, I think everything you were talking about in terms of problems, the situation was absolutely correct. I just want to mirror that. Not going to repeat it, obviously. And one of the things we keep hearing a lot about, the title of this conference is this idea of learning loss. And I think that's somewhat of a misleader because we're starting to see data coming out that it's not as much learning loss. That's kind of like saying, oh, well, my upper arm hurts, my lower arm hurts, let's treat the pain rather than like the broken elbow. What we're really seeing is the problems is first stratification. So I see it that our students that had lots of home resources during the pandemic doing pretty okay. They had parents that had, understood the content, could help them, access to the tools for learning. Students that didn't have that got further behind. So, we look at a loss of performance, but it's not a loss of performance that's equal across the board. So the solutions, can't be equal across the board either. The second thing, and this happened in the workforce too, is I think we're looking at a lot of motivation loss. A lot of our students went out and became essential employees during the pandemic rather than attending nebulous Zoom calls where there was no accountability to. And they're working right along college graduates who are making the same. And a lot of times our high schoolers will make more because they're willing to just do more. They'll go lift that box all day long, where someone who has, someone who's 23 or 24 might be worried about, if I destroy my knees, it's going to be really expensive. So, it's a lot of our students are coming back saying, well, I'm making just as much as this college graduate. Why do I need to go into a tech? Why do I need to do this hard thing? For our students that aren't there, it's motivation. They're like, wait a second, I can just go online and Google all the answers and not have to do these hard math and science things. Why am I here? And so I think this motivation loss along with stratification is where we're really seeing the STEM problem, this gap in STEM expand. So that's where I think we're starting from.
You made some great points. So my next question then related to that is, as an educator, and Chris, this is directed towards you, but Heather, feel free to jump in as well. What are some things that you do then to combat those the very home resources and motivation loss to help create a positive learning environment and continue to engage your students as they're dealing with these things?
I have one off the bat that I think really ties into this, and that is finding ways to have low lift community partnerships and expanding on that. This idea that, one of the things, because I came from didn't start off as an educator. I came from the business, from the corporate world, academic research, then corporate world. And one of the things that I saw was just the absolute massive effect that, having corporate community partners has on students. It's hard to see, but it's absolutely massive. The other two things I saw were not as great, is that schools are really, and teachers especially, are really bad at building and fostering these appropriately. And conversely, usually if they're fostered and supported correctly, pretty much every business that I've worked with is really into it. You get a professional in any field, especially technology, and give them the opportunity to really show their stuff off, their tiny niche field, someone who's an expert in, carbon fiber weaving, layering, to be able to show that off, they will spend all day doing so. So I think, trying to build those community partnerships the right way is where we're really at, because the way most schools and teachers go about it, and I'd love to hear comments on this, is they either go to businesses and just ask for money, like, oh, can we have money, will you print our t-shirts? At which point no business ever wants to answer those phone calls again, or they just say, oh, we'll just come present to our middle school class, and most people that are experts in the field aren't teachers. And so a lot of times those, oh, let me just come talk to the middle schoolers for a couple of hours, goes poorly. But when you can integrate professionals into lessons and teaching processes in ways that only require a few hours of their time, but are really deeply integrated to learning, that's the way forward that I see.
If I could chime in as well, I think absolutely, Christopher, you really were able to encapsulate a lot of that excellent information that's needed. I, on the other hand, take it from a different perspective of on the other side of the pendulum, where I'm teaching pre-service teachers who are interested within science and STEM. And so how do we engage that particular population as well? We have our K through 12, but what about those who are about to go into the field, and how to be able to motivate them? And I have to really put the full throttle of facing the fear of our students, because they are scared of science. It's point blank. They don't have the ability to be immersed within it within their elementary, middle, and high school careers. And so when they get to this point where I have the ability to mold and work with them, it's a challenge ultimately. And so it's a matter of immersing them, making them be able to dismiss that fear factor that doing hands-on, minds-on science is a good thing. It's a great thing, in fact. And to be able to continue that sustainability of engagement overall will eventually overcome that fear factor. So that way they feel comfortable within their own skin, per se, of understanding about science enough to be able to impart that knowledge to our students. And that is one area that needs to continue to be motivated, is to assist the teachers to feel comfortable enough to have that conversation about those multipliers and the mathematics and the sciences and the engineering and the technology. And if we can do that, then we help to be able to really build that pipeline of self-efficacy, self-confidence, and then that our results will become a stronger workforce for the better of it.
Thank you. So we have an audience question from Liliana Gonzalez directed towards Christopher regarding your comment about community partnership model. So she asked, there are many nonprofits and organizations who are interested in supporting students and families. How can districts standardize the community partnership model?
The answer to that, in my opinion, is they can't. By the time you start to standardize something, it's no longer a community model, because each community is going to be very, very different. I think having people that having incubator type systems where there can be mentors to teachers to help them build the community partnerships in their area and with their school and with their needs. are where we're going to be at. Yeah, I think standardization has been one of the bigger problems we've been facing, and you know, sort of what what Heather was saying a little bit was, I think we've taught people that they're bad at science. If we've done anything over the past years of this pure testing based approach to teaching science, we've just taught people that they're bad at it. Because if you don't get the perfect right answer on this worksheet, well, then you're the stupid one. Go look at the smart kid. And we haven't taught our teachers and therefore our students like how to make mistakes. But did I answer the question that was being asked?
Yeah, you did. Thank you. This next question directed to Heather, and something similar to the question I just asked Chris, or we started off with asking Chris. From your research, what are some aspects in which public school systems could improve their STEM curricula to better match the needs and learning methods of students?
Thank you so much. School systems have quite a challenge with everything that's going on, even more so. But how can they improve their STEM curricula? I had the opportunity to actually write curricula for a couple of school districts too. It's a matter of being thoughtful and purposeful in the intention of what actually is written. And that's just it, that a school can have a written curriculum, but will it be utilized? How will it be utilized? And so we have to have a lot of professional development within our teachers to support our teachers and showing them the how. And it's just not in that sense of when you go to professional development and teachers learn the how, but then how do they translate that into the maintenance and the sustainability of the implementation of that STEM curricula within their classroom? The challenge is not just academic, though, it's also economic. And a lot of this runs through the platform of how much money per student capita can we afford? How do we be able to ensure that our students have the most recent high-tech capability? When COVID hit, we had a drastic technological divide with our students. We had students who did have the capacity to have the technology needed, but then especially with our students who were underrepresented, they did not. And so how did we support them? And you also have to think too, in the sense of when students come to college, the particular statistic that's there that they're interested in STEM is the persistence factor too. And that when students actually for a 4-year will only, in actually a STEM degree, will only have 25% that persists. So where are the other 75% going is my question. And how is it that school districts can assist in that persistence rate? Well, it's the ability of having them to commit to STEM teaching, to commit to actually teaching science. We have many different models that are out there, such as they'll teach science and mathematics, but more so science every other 6 weeks or every other week, or maybe once a week. It's the continuation of teaching the content. I mean, think about it. Do you remember what you did last week if you only did it one time versus if you did it every single day? You're building up that foundation. So school districts, in my suggestion, need to be able to commit to that teaching of the STEM, being able to provide the allotment of time. The integration is very key, problem-based, project-based as well, having them be able to relate to science and a real world application is pertinent, allowing them to be able to have the hands-on, minds-on activities, giving them the time. And that's one factor too, is that the teachers have difficulty giving up time because I think that they're going to lose that time for providing some authentic learning. But in the flip side, it actually is a beneficial rate. And incorporating novelty and student decision-making into their learning is key. So it's a myriad of factors that actually districts need to work with, but to kind of also piggyback on what Chris was saying too, and trying to address the nonprofits, is that there's many nonprofits. School districts need to reach out to nonprofits to be able to assist. It takes a village to be able to assist and support our students, and finding those key personnel, either inside or outside of the school district, to increase the amount of STEM awareness is pertinent for our student success.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I can just jump on one thing to really highlight something Heather was saying, because I've seen it year after year, is we do a large STEAM expo where students are do projects and project-based learning. And we've been really lucky that our admin has very much supported that, because it's, a lot of admin would call it, well, that's learning loss. You're not teaching the standard to the test. You're giving them 2 whole weeks to learn, to work on a self-directed project. And they view that as, oh, well, that's just lost time from the admin standpoint, because there isn't a specific standard or knowledge or test question that you can tie it to. But then we look back at the effect that has on our students and their confidence and what they're able to do with all kinds of other data when they encounter it in the real world. And it's harder to pin down in a test, but it's very, very much real. And so I think I just want to cheer you on for supporting districts that are going to take that leap and say, well, yes, some of our kids may drop a couple points on this, on the biology part of the test, but there's something deeper going on.
And Chris, absolutely. One thing that I'm also the director of the Science and Engineering Fair of Houston. And so we are encompass 23 counties. So I completely am right there with what you do. And I applaud the districts and the school and the teachers that actually allow that extra STEM research to occur, because it's amazing. We're not all good test takers, right? It's only an indicator of that particular point of what that student knows. We got to be holistic. And it's the allowance of these particular extended extracurricular activities, such as science fair or other factors of STEAM expos and things of that nature, that really bring the comprehensiveness of the students' understanding. They get it, they got it. And that's what we want to see, is the mastery of that concept.
And one last kind of funny note is that almost every single year, I see that usually the best projects are actually from our not greatest science students, because our great science students who've learned to play the game of school, they're really great. Give them a worksheet, give them a test, they want to study, they want to find the answer, done. But give them there is no right answer kind of problem, and they get lost or scared. Whereas the kids that don't necessarily haven't mastered that game of school, all of a sudden you give them a blank, kind of a blank check for learning, and they're just going to go for it. And they come up with some of the most interesting and engaging projects. And they often, we need some more help to get the concepts down, but that's what we do as teachers. So I think, in building out partnerships, that's something important to remember, is that sometimes your best science students aren't going to be the ones that are going to benefit the most from a lot of these partnerships and hands-on activities.
Yeah, you all make a good point. I guess we have time for one more question. So we have STEM learning loss. We have this fear of science in general, of I'm not, good enough or smart enough to do science. So what are some advice that you all may have to either parents or teachers who are trying to get students, and especially those students that have already been underrepresented in STEM subjects, to get them more interested in either do STEM subjects in their schooling or going into STEM careers?
I'd love to be able to answer this real quick too. It's exposure, right? I started off having a conversation about the self-confidence and the self-efficacy. I cannot emphasize that enough. So let me give you an example. At the University of Houston STEM Center, what we do is we provide a program throughout the year where it's called STEM Zone Saturday, where we work with students from public housing as well as from across the 23 counties. And it's a hybrid format. It's ebb and flow with what we've had to do in the pandemic, of course, but we've been able to reach over 1,500 students in 1 year. How did that happen? Well, because we actually partner with our industry experts, with our university faculty on a Saturday, where they have the ability to express their particular type of journey in STEM, and the students can actually engage with them. Ask them those questions. I mean, how often is it that an underrepresented minority I may not be able to have that conversation with someone who's in the field. You know, it's that STEM career awareness. Students don't know if they don't know. And we have something in Texas where by 8th grade, students have to choose an endorsement track in order to be able to graduate with a certificate in high school. So not only it's a learn about the particular career, but it's a do. We provide those activities, engineering design, that is correlated to what the particular presenter is discussing. So it's a very comprehensive factor. And we also have our undergraduate students working with our students on campus during this time frame. So we try to be able to make it very equitable for our students. So that way the diversity of the instruction and the awareness factor is very key, and the promotion and motivation of students wanting to learn about STEM. And we know that's pivotal because by 8th grade, if a student is not necessarily in that algebraic expression of that particular class, then they have a much more difficult time as they move into high school. So we're trying to support and undergird that as well. You know, what I would suggest to parents is to keep seeking in your local area that provides STEM opportunities. Programs are throughout the year. And you know, I say, if you don't know, you don't try. Your students are at this time are at an age where it's impressionable for them to be able to expose various types of opportunities within the STEM measures. And so that's very key.
Chris, if you have I think we have 30 seconds left, if you can answer in that time.
Really quick, parents, stay in contact with teachers, stay in contact with teachers, stay in contact with teachers. And lastly, carve out time for those after school activities, those things, because we can't always do it in the classroom, just because the way the education set up, we have to find ways to be able to get students in after school programs or weekend programs. That means transportation, that maybe mean you make a few dollars less at a job, which I know it hurts, but it's the long term.
Thank you, Chris and Heather, so much for your time. Appreciate talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Leolyn, I wanted to ask you and the panel just one quick question. I loved what Chris said about not being able to do stuff overall for the whole community. Like every community is different. And so when I think about policy, I wonder, and if one of you could answer this because we don't have a lot of time, but if we're changing things at the legislative level, and at the legislative level, people like to do sort of this one policy for all type of thing, what could we do to really promote STEM in our schools? Leolyn, do you have an answer to that, or maybe Heather?
I would just quickly say I agree with Heather when she said it's exposure. I think one of my focuses at code.org is to get started early. So I'm thinking of Mississippi. They just had policy where all of their students in the state have to have access to fundamentals. So they're talking about K-5 teachers. And I think that's a really great way to have a policy, understand what their state needs for their students, and to get that in those classrooms started early.
Yeah, very good. And you know, you don't see a lot of early education centers that have sort of a STEM focus. We probably need more of that. But then conversely, all of us know at the elementary level, you see a lot of students of color, a lot of girls that are very interested in STEM, and it narrows, you know, so how do we sort of, that's another question, right, for us to keep talking about. Leolyn, Chris, Heather, thank you guys very, very much for your participation today, for your kind words. Thank you so much. Very good. So we have another panel coming up, but before we do that, our raffle winners, and Lindsay, you want to give us an idea of what we have going on for our raffle? Because we have 2 raffle winners, right?
Yes. So our first 2 raffle winners are Sharice Knight and Tamira Fleming. Congratulations, guys.
Very good. And that's a pretty nice little computer there, right? A little HP Pro 360. So very nice. Very good. Thank you, Lindsay, very much. Let's bring on Brad, my buddy Brad Simmons. Brad is on the board of Children at Risk. He's also the head of the Student Association of the Jones School of Business at Rice University, one of the finer universities in the country, Brad. So great to have you here from there. And Brad, take it away. I'm really interested. By the way, I love this session because you have so many good people on here. I was just over with Kathy Chen at the Fab Lab in El Paso, not too long ago. What great stuff going on there. And the Black Girls Do Engineer stuff. Just some fantastic stuff you're going to be talking about. So take it away, Brad.
Thank you, Dr. Bob, for the kind introduction. And it's good to be here today, everyone. And I'm really excited to hear what our panelists have to say on the STEM for All topic here. So I want to introduce our speakers first. We have with us Kathy Chen, who's the Executive Director of Fab Lab. We also have Kara Branch, a chemical engineer and also the founder and CEO of Black Girls Do Engineer Corporation. And finally, Shane Woods, who's the Executive Director of Girl Start. I'd like to kick off this conversation with our panelists by first just getting into where they've ended up developing their passion for STEM education. So Kathy, Kara, Shane, whoever wants to chime in first, how did you develop your passion for STEM in the first place?
Hi, Brad. I guess I'll go first. So it's really interesting because I have a really non-traditional pathway to the area that I now work at. And it's interesting because I was one of those kids growing up that really felt like I was stuck in these liminal spaces. I was, kind of too artsy for the science crowd, but then too much of a systems thinker for just the creatives and the humanities people. So I always felt this kind of discomfiture growing up with traditional pathways in school. And I really wanted to embrace like multidisciplinary learning. And the space that really allowed me to fully be myself was a maker space. And I just remember the feeling of first like encountering that kind of community where people were working in tandem, collaboratively, and across disciplines. It really just felt like I've found my community, I found my tribe. But I've always been, one of those people that have loved really varied disciplines and really varied areas of interest. And so, yeah, my pathway to STEM was really just finding that intersection between art and science.
Yeah, I'll go next. So for myself, I really owe it to my 8th grade chemistry teacher and also my freshman college advisor and my aunt. They're the reason why I'm a chemical engineer today. I've always been really good with math, science, even writing. But no one ever said to my mom, they always say, your daughter's smart, she's smart. But no one ever said to her what I actually could be. So it was actually my freshman year of college where sitting down with my advisor and she said, well, you're pretty good at math and science. Let's look and see what you can do. And then I seen chemical engineering on that track. I had a goal of being a dance major because I love to dance. That's something I knew. I did it most of my life. And my aunt said, that's great, but let's look at getting you something else to do with your career. So because of that, they're really the reason I'm a chemical engineer today.
And mine started with one of those wonderful, I would go to the summers with my grandparents and we were forced to stay outside. And so being outside, you start discovering the world that you're in. And my grandfather was the quintessential woodshop teacher. So we didn't know that, I didn't know that girls were supposed to touch tools and things. We were building stuff. We were constantly doing raised gardens with my grandmother. So I realized that outside, and it was just really a different way of experiencing science. And then just like the ladies on this panel, yet again, getting told, you're really good at this. Like you really seem to capture that. And I heard the teacher earlier say that, I guess I was one of those students that did play school well. I completed my work. I did it all great. But then I would also start participating in things like invention convention and winning, competing in state fair, science fairs and winning. So I realized it was something that I really liked, but I was still born in the 70s and we only thought of a couple of careers. So getting to college is when I realized there was definitely more out there for those that are like-minded with me, excelling in math and science, and then kind of pursuing, different avenues is how I really realized that science was for me. It was not only just playing outside and discovering, but trying to figure out why.
I think those are all very authentic and related insights. I think about how important the acknowledgement and the reinforcement piece is that you have an aptitude for this, and keeping a very open interpretation of what science is and what it can be. So thanks for all of you for sharing. I want to start off with Cara on this next question. And so you have quite a vast array of experiences when it comes to STEM, from engineering to being in the oil and gas space, and now you're running your own nonprofit. So with your organization, Black Girls Do Engineer, how are you working to increase representation in STEM fields and access to STEM resources for minorities?
Yeah, so we're fairly new, started in 2019. And yes, I worked across multiple industries. I actually are a manager in tech now. So I work for a tech company and still do this nonprofit, which is key for me because I feel like I have to always keep my skill sets advanced because that's the girls I'm working with, right? So I continue to work and do this. However, for representation, I think because my team alongside me are also all STEM professionals and we look like the girls that we work with. It's very key. I give an example, our first members meeting, we spent the whole hour talking to the girls in our program about what we do. And they were just in shock to see women like us doing these fields, right? So it's very key. They've never seen it before, right? So we go against the motto, you have to see it to believe it. And so, you know, that's huge. Representation is huge for what we do. And it's most definitely needed. I can give another example from the application process for my program. I asked girls, what women, Black women in STEM do you know? They all gave the same answer, Dr. Mae Jemison, which she's amazing. But there's so many other women that paved the way. So it's just providing that knowledge of what we've done, right, in this great space as well. So the way we do that is just having that see it to believe it, you know, philosophy here. And also, like I mentioned earlier, exposure, right? So we start exposing them as early as 6 years old. And having them, I mean, exposure is the only way you're going to know, right? What you can do, what you can be, what you like, what you don't like. So we start that early. And that, again, the representation piece, put those two together, it helps build confidence in our girls in our community. And so we're seeing that. We're seeing our girls now go into their careers. And we're also seeing our girls going to college to study STEM careers now. So we like to say it's working, but there's also so much that needs to happen and so much needs to be done.
Before I ask the next question, panelists, do you have any other comments on what Cara was elaborating on?
Sure, I think having worked formally with Girl Scouts, it is that Sally Ride, see it, they have to see it, they have to be exposed to it. But you have to start earlier, and that's something that I think, unfortunately, people target middle and high school when they've already experienced a lot of the reasons why girls turn away from STEM. So it's wonderful to have partners in crime who know that you've got to start as soon as that curiosity hits. I always say that kids don't need the vocabulary first. They just need the wonder, the curiosity, the interest. Because if you hand a child a box, a gift, they're going to start shaking it. So they start using their senses immediately to figure out and find those answers. So she's right on in what is needed, and being proximal to the community is key for girls to see a story like theirs, similar to theirs. It doesn't mean that they have to only have been in an at-risk, you know, I come from an affluent neighborhood in Sugar Land, Texas. I still didn't know what was possible for me. So it's one of those things that girls must see someone who has a similar trajectory as them, and also see the impact that they're making on the world in order to know that, yes, that career is for me and I'm going to make a difference.
Thank you, Shane. And I just want to follow up there for a moment. So your organization, Girls Start, is all about increasing access to opportunities at a young age for kids to get engaged in STEM in hands-on ways. And you know, why do you think it's important for STEM activities to expand beyond the classroom from your perspective?
Having been a middle school science teacher for 5 years, I know what it feels like to have to try and teach a state standard within only this many days, having picture days and fire drills and all that interrupt your instruction. So it is crucial for out-of-school partners to be really those that stand in the gap, that also do not offer it in a way that feels like school 2.0. No, we are giving you a different experience. We're teaching you not only how to learn and apply that knowledge that you're getting in that classroom, which is critical, but also what does it look like to truly apply it to a real life situation? How does that connect to a career? How does it connect to a passion? So even those who go into law, guess what? We still need intellectual property lawyers to help us understand these things that we're inventing and coming up with solutions. So it's one of those things that as out of school partners, we are right there to help our teacher friends and to make sure that the kids see the connection, that they don't leave science in fifth period and never think about it again until the next time they walk into fifth period. That is where you are every time. I would always start my classroom with like, how'd y'all use science today? And the kids at first kind of didn't understand. I was like, who washed their hair today? That was chemical. That's a product tester. That's quality assurance. Those are careers that got that shampoo to use safely. So just letting kids understand that they're ready for whatever science has for them. They don't have to be a certain type of science or a certain type of master of any curriculum in order to be a scientist. You know, that famous having the kids draw what they think a scientist looks like. And luckily it's starting to shift, but you know, it used to always be Albert Einstein or something adjacent to that image. But it's one of those things that you're starting to see kids even put themselves in there. Like I love making, you know, going outside and gardening with my dad or helping someone with a car, you know, fixing the car. It's just one of those things of letting them know that science is truly connected to just about every career that we have out there.
I think that really also connects into my next question then for Kathy. When you look at the expanse of opportunities of, you know, how you engage with science in your daily life and the intersection of science also with various aspects of what people would normally consider dichotomous and, you know, the applications of art and, you know, trying to enhance this conversation to also be inclusive to people who want to work in more of like the STEAM realm. So for Kathy, you know, you focus on the interaction of arts and technology. And when you're thinking about how this integration looks like, why do you personally encourage STEAM-based criteria for kids and when they're being introduced to science?
Yeah, so that really was a fundamental strategy for us as a grassroots nonprofit makerspace in El Paso, Texas. I've, you know, previous to moving to El Paso, I've inhabited various other metropolitan spaces where, you know, there was an understanding in general of applicational science, applicational technology, and there were the kind of cohorts of talent to support those types of spaces. But El Paso and just the border region at large was a little bit different. We kind of had to even start building that trust with the community and building that repertoire of rhetoric to be able to communicate and be on the same page. And we realized very quickly that, you know, we were not our target audience. And we really needed to make a shift where we are immersing ourselves in the community and embedding ourselves in the community in a way that is culturally relevant, that is, you know, inclusive and promotes a sense of, you know, diversity and belonging. So for us, art was just a really natural entry point because there was already a thriving artistic community in El Paso. And, you know, the arts in general is a really critical cultural component too of the predominantly Hispanic community that we serve in El Paso. So we wanted to, you know, really draw them in or invite them to the party through arts and cultural explorations. But then, you know, of course, always layer it with healthy dosages of STEM, digital skills, and you know, the technical and hard skills that they need in order to thrive in a 21st century economy. So we did a lot of really, you know, interesting events that were kind of out of the box or out of the box thinking type, you know, events like a drink and draw, but with 3D pens to teach the fundamental concepts of fused deposition modeling, 3D printing. Or we did another workshop where it was yoga with robots, where we, you know, had the kids put together humanoid robots, but then we, you know, kind of programmed a little yoga routine that the kids can follow along with the robot that they just created and coded. So it's just these really fun ways of, you know, really just meshing together, like what you said, dichotomous, right? Like that kind of binary thinking that we often stick kids with very early on. And in fact, interesting statistic that I always go back to is the fact that when they have surveyed employers in 2019 and 2020, really the top skill that employers are looking for is creative problem solving skills. And that's across the board, whether you are in the STEM field or not. And I think the best way to really teach those skills in an organic way is by infusing it with copious amounts of interdisciplinary work. So you can definitely, teach STEM in a way that doesn't, sit on top of a curriculum, or doesn't sit on top of, school, or even sometimes, jobs or secondary work that a lot of our community members participate in order to support their families. So yeah, I mean, this is something that we're very passionate about, and it really defines every aspect of what we do at Fab Lab.
Any other comments to add on Kathy's pitch?
I really loved how she mentioned the interdisciplinary. I think those that are in the K-12 school setting understand, especially those in elementary, I'll start there, K through 5, really understand that it's especially in the state of Texas, it's math and reading. They don't get to science sometimes, and social studies is just, we won't even talk about the lack of minutes they get. But I always try and reinforce that you could teach everything through a science unit if you wanted to. You can teach literacy, you can do computational skills, you can talk about the history of discovery, all through a science unit in a way that the kids will not feel like they are getting routine and beat, all those things of just kill and drill. You can really see and open up and do teaching differently. And I was really hoping that unfortunate pineapple that we all got through that pandemic, we would learn how to do science and learning differently. And it's one of those things that I'm so happy to hear how you can integrate different things through science. It really truly is interdisciplinary in a way that I really hope people start grasping and learning how to do that in a way that makes those kids feel like they're not in school, they're in discovery and learning mode. And not only are they doing that with partners like us, but also hopefully start doing it in the classroom. So that way the kids don't feel so bothered by school and they want to learn. So I'm really, that just made my heart sing. I even wrote it down. It's like yoga and robots. Yes.
All right. Well, let's change gears a little bit. So for kids, maybe at the end of the day, they've gone through their elementary, middle school experiences, and maybe STEM isn't necessarily a career that they still are super passionate about. We don't want to try to put a square hole into, or put a square into a circular hole. I think that's the reference, right? I got close. But for kids, maybe that's not the career path or the realm that they're going to be in. Why is it still important that they do develop these STEM literacy skills, and how can we still make sure that we are opening opportunities to engage those students in the classroom? And this could be to anyone.
Well, from my stance, I've never worked in a classroom, so can't speak from a classroom perspective, but I can just speak from the work I do in the community. I have girls who just come to, from day one, they know that they don't want to do STEM, but it's still that exposure element for me, right? At least you can say you tried it. At least you can say you did something and it's not for you, right? How do you know? That was the thing for me as a kid. Like, I wasn't exposed to anything STEM. I just knew how to make great grades in school. I loved learning. But I didn't have those things. I didn't have those resources in my community, right? And so I always tell people in my program, they know that's a huge word of mine. It's resources. We're a resource to you. Come try it out. You may not like it. That's okay. At least you know you don't, so you can go try something else. And so that's what I always do from my stance. I can't really, again, speak from the educator perspective. So I'll pass that part back to Shane and Kathy on that.
Yeah, at Fab Lab, we are unfortunately not integrated into the classroom either, just because there's a lot of red tape, as everyone knows, around just trying to change the way that administration kind of has this top-down attitude in schools, but we work alongside a lot of teachers to bring their kids for out of school experiences, for field trips, for just some sort of enrichment program for the kids. And it's immense to see the difference that it makes in their attitudes and in the kinds of modes of thinking that they jump into when they are in our in our space, and in that kind of headspace as well, of being a maker, a tinkerer, as somebody who is, in discovery mode, as you guys said. So, I mean, for us, it's really, this idea of we want to show the kids that these are digital skills that are going to be as fundamental as knowing how to read in the future. And but also, not just kind of paying lip service to that, because for a lot of youths that doesn't really resonate, that they don't really understand it. So it is, again, like, it is by demonstrating how integrated science and technology is in every aspect of our lives, even for people who are pursuing careers that are very traditional, like, in the humanities fields, like museum curators, right, are now using 3D scanning to preserve artifacts from the past. And, or there are musicians and writers who are working with artificial intelligence programs to produce like really just really cutting edge work. And I think that these are the kinds of stories that really pique the imagination and pique the creative mind. And I think it's universally appealing to kids, no matter what trajectory or pathway they decide down the line. But yeah, that awareness piece is really important. Just knowing that whatever field you do choose, there's going to be very few fields where you are completely insulated from digital skills and digital technology. And all of those are made possible by the STEM skills that are taught. So yeah, so storytelling is a really critical component too of how we teach STEM. It's to help the kids create a cogent narrative of themselves, right, and their journey and their identity, and how everything kind of sutures together to make them this singular, amazing, unique being in society when they are ready to kind of, integrate themselves into a professional environment. So yeah, I mean, that's, just kind of how we've been ideating on the integration of STEM for schools, for after school, but also for enrichment.
And I think that something that Kara said, that Kara or Cara, I probably am tearing your name up, so sorry. Is that we do get those girls who come to us that already hate STEM. And I'm like, you know what? You're the one that I want to talk to, because unfortunately you've had an unfortunate experience, or somehow you already have this mindset of you're not good at it, or you heard a parent say, I hate math. And so you think you're going to be bad at math. And so Girl Start really is trying to target those young ladies who don't know that STEM is about them. But the skills that they get, regardless of what career they go into, is what's key. It's that moving beyond, STEM literacy to STEM fluency, and understanding that you need that grit, that resilience, that stick to it, is that courage to raise your hand and try. Statistics always say that boys will raise their hand regardless if they know the answer. Girls want to make sure they know that answer before they do. So experiences with groups like us give those girls that anchoring experience to say, I know that, I've heard about that, I've tried digital coding, or I've done this experience, or I know someone that does electrical engineering. I know that answer, or at least I'm going to try. And I think it's just those things of teamwork, especially coming back into community in the school after being, shut down. Science is allowing kids to do that teamwork, that collaboration, that relying on someone else. You don't have to be the expert. You just need to be able to work with a group of experts, if you will, and really know what you're doing, and to be able to communicate what you're doing, to be able to communicate when you need to try again, to be willing to try again, to know that it's going to fail and just fail forward and laugh and keep moving. So STEM and science gives kids those opportunities to be better adults hopefully, based upon those experiences and seeing those mentors who say, this is my 5th career. I didn't get a PhD in 4 years. I got mine in 10 years. To hear that people stick with it in order to become the careers that they want to be, but also have those experiences like those at Fab Lab, that you didn't know science was there, that you didn't know that that's the link to it, that I like music, but did you understand what it looks like to program that board and get that sound just perfect? What does it mean to have those headphones on and they're not too loud, disrupting your eardrums? So it takes all of us doing the STEM and the veggie and the smoothie way, because kids keep hearing STEM and some of them are just turning it off. So we got to do it in a way that they don't know they experience STEM. You have to say, did you have an amazing time today? Yeah, guess what? You also learned about physics. And you start just naming off these things that they've done and they're like, maybe I am good at that. Maybe I do need to come back. But also something I would tell my middle school students is, I'd rather you hate it here than go to college and waste time and money and really realize you're not supposed to be an engineer, that you're supposed to go and be an amazing optometrist, or you're supposed to be a writer who helps talk about and spread the story. So please try it here when it's free, if you will, from K through 12, before you get to high school or college and go, oh, that wasn't for me.
I just
Thank
have
you
to,
all. Go ahead.
Sorry, Brad, to interrupt. I just have
No, you're
to
good.
follow up to what Shane said, because it just resonates so much on so many levels. One of the things that really, we felt the need to push back on was this hyper focus on robotics, right? As when they say STEM, they were not really talking about science and math. They're really talking about just robotics. And of course, there's good reason for why that is, obviously one of the largest funded kind of careers, right? Especially for our region with such a big focus on aerospace and defense. But at the same time, the ways in which robotics has created this bro culture and created this culture of competition instead of over collaboration, and sort of this taskmaster, like task driven, but not necessarily towards a purpose. It's just for the completion of a task. All of these things really makes us very allergic at Fab Lab, because we feel that, for some kids, it's great to have those opportunities and they thrive in those environments. But for a lot of other kids, they need something where they can, build empathy and create a connection with their end user, and build something where they can see it impacting somebody in a positive way. They need to learn to work in a collaborative environment where everyone is assigned a different role and and is able to shine in their own right. And so we've kind of participated now in this anti-robotics competition now this is our 2nd year, which is an assistive device challenge for kids, where they have to go out in the community and find an end user to create an assistive device for, using a variety of 3D tools and digital skills and STEM skills. And it's very collaborative, and it's very empathy driven. It's very user experience driven. And I think that these are fundamentally, when you think about the broader scope of STEM pathways, and just really for all fields and disciplines, these are the skills that will really carry an individual forward in their profession. So, I just really love the way that Shane has differentiated and pinpointed the critical components of what it takes to integrate science.
And if I can add real quickly, and I think people geared that way because those robotics and coding offers that hands-on approach in a kit, right? But there's a lot of other ways, like my organization, we focus on energy, life science, and other ways. And a lot of those ways are not kitted. So people are struggling with how to implement those ways into their programs, right? So, we do a lot of robotics as well. I mean, I work in artificial intelligence with my company. So we do a lot of things around AI. But it is a whole other different avenue of STEM things that you can do outside of tech. And for us, tech is just our foundation. We want to make sure our girls know how to code, because tech is in everything you do, as mentioned earlier. But we also introduce them to so many different career spectrums that you can go to with STEM. So just wanted to
guys. Thank you guys. Brad, what a great panel you have here, Brad. This is fantastic. Thank you so much. And Kathy, I so appreciate the stuff you're talking about in terms of how it's hard to get into the classroom, right? I mean, a lot of the super creative stuff absolutely should be in the classroom. And I often think, I've talked about this at past STEM summits, about how we've created in this country sort of a pyramid, right? A lot of kids interested, and we try to wean everyone away when indeed it should be an inverted pyramid. All these interesting things should be making more kids want to do STEM and arts and science, all of this combined. It's just, which is exactly what you guys are doing. So thank you all very, very much for the work that you're doing. And Kathy, I can't wait for my next visit to the Fab Lab in El Paso. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Brad, very much. Let's move to our next panel, and Eric Pyle is with us. Dr. Eric Pyle, professor of geology at James Madison and the president of the National Science Teaching Association. Eric, we're very excited to have you here with us for this great panel. And I'm going to have you take it away, Eric.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And just to correct, I'm retiring president, but that doesn't mean there's any less times I get called. Nevertheless, we actually had a good meeting in Houston this past spring, so I'm very happy to help with this particular event. I'd like to introduce our next panel here, which is comprised of Desh Bagley, founder and CEO of the Tech Play Zone, Dr. Rachma Mathur, founder and CEO of the STEMology Club, and Mrs. Patricia Cortez, math and science teacher, VEX IQ robotics coach, Dallas Independent School District. Welcome. Okay, so I'm going to start with you, Desh, if you don't mind, and I'll invite the others to chime in as appropriate here. Desh, what initially drew you to STEM and STEM education?
Thank you, Eric. I'm excited to be joining everybody. I grew up in Beaumont, Texas. Whoop, whoop. Give it up for the Golden Triangle. I had the awesome privilege of attending Westbrook Senior High School and having a fantastic mentor by the name of Dr. Richard Price. Dr. Price recognized that a lot of us students in the schools were smart. I'll say the word smart, hardworking. However, the rigor in the classroom, he thought would not take us to the levels that we needed to get to in order to achieve the success that he saw for us. So Dr. Price would bring us to NSBE conferences while we were in high school, National Society of Black Engineer conferences across the country. He would bring us to Lamar University, or our parents would drop us off, and then Dr. Price would be there at Lamar University, preparing us to take trigonometry and pre-calculus and calculus while we were freshmen and sophomores in high school. He was giving us the higher order math. And Dr. Price was the first person to introduce me to an Apple IIe, a computer. And he was the first person to show me programming languages. I eventually got my bachelor's degree in computer science from University of South Florida. But at the time, as a sophomore in high school, I started programming on the Apple IIe. As the oldest of 4 children, I like to tell people what to do. I'm pretty bossy, and nobody likes to be told what to do, Eric. But guess what? You can tell a computer what to do all day, all night, and they do not complain. So I realized that that was my passion. That was my path. I enjoyed problem solving. I enjoyed coding. I got the rigor of math and science from Dr. Price, if not from my high school teachers. And I went forward. It did take me a little bit to finish that bachelor's degree. I share that story with my students just to give them that whole perseverance aspect of things. But I have it. I started a company, and now I'm excited to share my passions with other educators.
Thank you. That's very good. Rachna, how about you?
Yes. Hi. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really love listening to Desh's story. It resonates with me. So how did I get into STEM? I grew up in New Jersey, and my dad, well, he didn't have a lot of money, but for some reason he decided to buy a computer. And that was probably the only item that we actually did have. And also, oddly enough, I think our school had computers as well, like Apple Commodores, also very strange at that time. And I started coding when I was in 3rd grade with, if anyone remembers, it just kind of dates me, it's Logo is what I would code with the little turtle. And yeah, there we go. I see a thumbs up there. And I started coding like choose your own adventure stories in basic. So I really liked the creative, like storytelling process in it. And that sort of set me on my path, possibly. And when I got to college, I eventually did my degree in computer engineering. I loved it, but I was listening to the previous speakers, I think Kathy Chen and a few others. I never fit. I never fit in, but and this again dates me. Kathy talked about how she had makerspace opportunities. Those things didn't even exist when I went to school. So I went down that path of computer engineering and sort of over time found my way through different arenas and art and performing arts. I also teach classical Indian dance professionally, but I didn't discover that until I was an adult because I thought that, you know, as a computer engineer, worked at Intel for a decade, I started dancing only after I started working. So I sort of have found my path along the way. And now I ask myself, what do I want to be when I grow up all the time? And I so appreciate you calling me doctor, but I'm not quite doctor yet. I am doing my doctorate in education. So I've pivoted this way around, and I'm hoping to be a doctor by 2024. So those are some of the things that inspired me to get into STEM. My dad is also an engineer. My mom is a zoologist. She never practiced, but that definitely formed an inspiration for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia, how about you? You're a little different take here.
Hi, Eric. Thank you guys for having me. Yes, totally different take from Desh and from Rachna. I'm a teacher in Dallas ISD. I grew up in Dallas ISD. In fact, I teach at the school that I went to school at as a child. So growing up, I knew I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't know what kind of teacher I wanted to be. It wasn't until I was in a self-contained classroom that I saw my students really hated math. They have that misconception that math is hard. That was instilled with them, with their parents. A lot of people think math is hard. And so I knew I wanted to be a math teacher. So for the past 8 years, I've been a math and science teacher. I truly love it. That's where my passion is. Then the other thing that drew me into STEM education was co-coaching a robotics team. So I helped train them, but I was kind of like behind the scenes. I would just train them in documenting their engineering process, in STEM research projects. But then when the pandemic occurred, I decided I wanted to venture out on my own and create my own team. I wanted this team to have a major impact in underrepresented communities in the STEM field. So therefore, I created an all-girl Latina team. And the strides that these ladies made in all aspects of their lives, not just in robotics, that's what's kept me intrigued in the world of STEM.
Okay, thank you. So here's another one. So these are very inspirational stories, but we'll start with you, Rachna. What do you feel, or excuse me, what challenges have you observed when it comes to engaging students with STEM subjects?
You know, some of the things that I've heard from even the previous conversations and from many others around is that we don't start early enough. And that was really what got me into starting my own company. Not to say that we are learning math, we are learning science, but I was looking at the kind of interdisciplinary learning of STEM, the integrative learning of STEM. And that was one of the challenges that I saw and why I started my company. My own kids are around this elementary age range. My kids' school didn't have any kind of clubs after school or in school for that matter. So I said, you know, let's kick off. I started a robotics class like Patricia has been talking about too. That was like a easy connect to start with. Legos draws kids in. It was something that they already knew. And then we were just tacking on a little bit more with the coding aspects to it. So I found that every time I was looking for something for my kids, I'm in Arizona, and in my locality, I just wasn't finding as many in the elementary range. And even when I did, they would do the activities, but not really dive into the questions. I felt like more than the actual doing of the activity itself was when I stepped back and just asked the question and facilitated that conversation. So those are some of the challenges that I found, and I do see that changing. The other thing is in the classroom, in that K-6, sort of, that's a realm that I work in is K-6, and that's what I understand best. our teachers are so taxed to teach everything that, the partnership that can happen with outside community educators like myself, some of those relationships could be stronger. And that's part of my also interest in work that I'm working on is with the Next Education Workforce at Arizona State University that looks at like team teaching and how do you get community educators like myself a little bit closer and tighter with the classroom. How do I help in the classroom and outside the classroom? So those are some of the challenges that I'm working on.
Okay, great. Thank you. Patricia, what about you?
For the challenges that I've seen in STEM subjects is engaging the students in the more rigorous tasks, such as programming. I do robotics as an after-school program, sorry. And they're engaged, they love robotics. I have them 100% until it comes to the programming aspect. So it's those more rigorous subjects. So as Rachna was mentioning, getting those outside community members that know about this, because I'm just a teacher, I'm not a programmer, I have no engineering background. So it gets really hard to try to teach them these aspects and put it at their level. So I think getting help, outside help from community members in helping with those more rigorous tasks, such as autonomous programming and all those other rigorous things that I can't tackle as an educator.
Okay, thanks. Dash, with your organization, do you see the same challenges with engagement, or are they self-selecting to participate in the Tech Play Zone?
Yeah, Tech Play Zone is a self-selecting type of organization. And typically the people that are self-selecting to participate are white males, ages 9 to 11. And so we have to be very intentional about inviting other groups of students to come and join us, and work past some of those stereotypes that the previous panel discussed. That's a serious matter of building confidence and creating interest. Once we get the students on site, then we have no problems with retention. Retention is easy once we have them, but it's just getting them. I am gonna say a few things about what Patricia said. The first thing is that there's no such thing as just a teacher or just an educator. So, right, kudos to you guys who are in that classroom day in and day out, engaging with our students on all levels, social, emotional, and educational. The other thing is that I think our educators do need some pre-service training opportunities and outside of their subject matter, or if it's within their subject matter, then we have to start incorporating the digital skills and the digital models of how they can have curriculum integration with the types of tools that we all know kids love. So if it's drones or 3D printing or robotics, right? I'm a first robotics partner for the West Florida region. So I help 17 counties form robotics teams in school. I understand how powerful robotics can be. But as was mentioned on the previous panel, not all kids are going to be into robots. Some kids love art. And there is the DALL-E GPT-3 artificial intelligence art design. But our teachers don't know anything about those things because it's not incorporated into their pre-service curriculum or into their professional development training. And then the other thing I see, because I do train quite a few teachers, is just helping them understand what's out there and creating confidence amongst our teachers, giving them that capacity to know that this is for them. They can do it. It's not rocket science. I promise you, drones and snap circuits or the whole idea of 3D modeling and printing what you're learning in history on a 3D printer isn't difficult. All it takes is just like our kids need some support, some training, some educational materials. So the challenge that I often see, not so much from the kids' standpoint, but from the educator standpoint, is helping our teachers get the training they need, the grant funds that will help them support their curriculum, and some partners inside the classroom. And we can talk more about that, Eric. The idea of how teachers can collaborate with one another. The CTE teachers can collaborate with the English teachers. The geometry teacher can collaborate with the engineering teacher, and how those things can help all of our educators flourish with STEM.
Wonderful. You're sort of anticipating some future parts of the discussion, time permitting here, but I really thank you for that input. And so sort of going ahead here a little bit, you know, and I'm going to sort of open this up here. What are some of the shifts that you've noticed in STEM education that have been driven by the pandemic? And then sort of think about what are some of the lasting effects? You know, certainly there's the short-term acute thing where we all had to learn Zoom or something similar. But what's some of the long-term impacts? What should we anticipate for the future of STEM education? I'll open it up here. Rachna, Patricia, you know, please.
So technology is not going away. That's what this pandemic has caused for us. And it's not just Zoom. It is integrating technology and embracing technology within an instruction. But in order to do that, like Desh was mentioning earlier, we have to train our educators. We have to do it cross curriculum. It's not just we're going to teach the math teachers and the science teachers how to do this technology and how to integrate technology because they're part of STEM, but we're going to leave out the reading teachers. We're going to leave out social studies. One issue that I've noticed when I do receive technology trainings is they kind of blanket it, and it's trying to target all subjects, and that doesn't help educators. Like, we need exactly how is it going to look in my classroom? Give me some concrete examples on how that can help me directly with third grade math. How can it help me directly with third grade science? We have a lot of veteran teachers on campus, and they're really stuck in the traditional classroom mindset, but we kind of got to leave that in the past because we are in this technology era and it's not going away. But they need that training. We need to be able to service them just like we differentiate instruction for our students in the classroom, get them at their level. We have to do that for our teachers as well, so that our veteran teachers can incorporate this technology just like the younger teachers. That way we can all be able to get our students into this 21st century mindset, because we're going into a really competitive world with all these other countries being so far advanced in technology that we need to prepare them for that. And I think in order to prepare them, we have to prepare our educators.
That's just, oh, Desh, did you want to say, I guess, are you on mute there?
No, that's all right. Go for it. I'll follow you.
Okay, I was just thinking about, Patricia, you're about talking about the sort of blanket technology that gets applied into the kind of, I guess, professional development or teaching or whatever happens. One of the things that, as in looking at this future of what's happening in STEM and education, so much gets weighted onto this technology side naturally, just because that is a connector. One of the things that I kind of, I guess, concerns me is the explosion in the ed tech arena that's happened. And as much as I say this coming from technology, having worked at Intel, and my husband himself being an education strategist at a big tech company, educational technology company, knowing this is something that's a debate in our house constantly, is that a lot of these solutions are being thrown into the school space. And I was talking to one of the district leaders just yesterday in Arizona, and that's what it turns. Oftentimes she's literally looking at this list of technologies and services and things, and those are very confusing. And sometimes I feel like what Patricia's saying, that ends up things are adopted somewhere up here at this level, and then they just get thrown at the teachers. And then the question of, is it, you know, who was in that conversation? Were our teachers in that conversation when these decisions were made? In my, like, you know, idealistic world, I thought so, and I am outside the system, but no, that's not the case. It's a lot of times I feel like we're struggling through these myriad of solutions when sometimes it's a lot simpler than that too. So that's like one of the things that I think, I don't know that that's a future, but it is a current thing that we're having to navigate through right now. There's this big bubble of ed tech explosion, and then you see now that's starting to dwindle down, and like you see these layoffs happening in a lot of these companies, because, well, we're kind of all that. It was free and now it's not. So that's another kind of an issue that happened during the pandemic. So I'm kind of curious to see how we as our schooling systems are going to navigate these kind of solutions, sometimes on our own, sometimes with help. And you know, I'd love to hear other perspectives too. So I don't have an answer to it, but that's a thought that I have.
Yeah. Go Dash.
As far as the pandemic goes, what we've seen a lot in Hillsborough County, I live in Florida now, is take-home kits. So science teachers have found funding, or the districts have found funding to send the kits home with the students. And when that happened, we started getting more parents involved. We would hear the students talk about, oh, I didn't realize that this is what my child was doing in school, you know, oh, and it brought me back to my days. I wish they had this when I was in school. And so just being able to find that funding to send some of the kits home, some of the examples home. I know for our elementary school kids, they were sent home with science kits that looked like candle making, or that looked like perfume making, or, you know, just that same thing. I hate to keep saying about the previous panel, but my gosh, weren't they rock stars? They were all really good. So that idea about shampoo simply being a chemical agent that's helping to clean the hair, right? Molecules intercepting with water and all that good stuff. That's literally what we've been seeing here in the school district. The whole idea of sending things home with the kids to work on with their parents. And then the other thing, based on what Rachna was saying, as far as connecting all of the various ed tech equipment to what teachers actually need for their classrooms, we did a pretty good job in the beginning of connecting technology with the standards that the teachers needed to test toward, right? This is how this particular drone will help you explain various mathematical principles or whatever to your students. But what we haven't done such a great job with is providing the tutorials or the how-tos or the videos, or I think what happens, and somebody put it in the chat about self-efficacy, a lot of our teachers want to have the confidence of knowing what they're going to teach, whereas what I continuously say, and it goes against the grain of, it's okay to let the kids teach you every once in a while. It's okay to let the kids see you not know the answer to something, and then see you figure out how to problem solve and find the answer. Because in life, that's literally what every profession has to do. We none of us, lawyers, doctors, you know, just none of us know the answers right off the bat. And we have to find ways to problem solve, self-study, and learn the answers. So if our teachers can perhaps think about that when they're introducing new skills into the classroom. We should do a better job of giving teachers the educational models that they need to learn the material, true. But at the same time, we want our educators to think about not having to be the sage on the stage 100% of the time.
Okay. We have enough time for one last quick question for all of you. And you sort of led very nicely into this, Dash. So thank you. And really, you've hit on the things about what do we need to do to provide teachers, and I'm thinking at all career levels, whether it's pre-service, whether they're induction in their first few years of teaching, and then the mid-career teachers, about the professional learning opportunities. I mean, this is something NSDA is seriously invested in, professional learning for teachers, not just in the formal space, but in the informal space as well. And so talk just for a second or two about what you think we need to do to drive home this idea that teachers, broadly speaking, need these professional learning opportunities.
Yeah, teachers need it. And not only do they need it, they need the stipends to go along with it. And we have to find ways to help our teachers get an opportunity, not just to use their summer times to do professional development, but allow them to use their in-school time as well. And I know it all costs money, you guys. I'm a big proponent of let's put our money where our mouth is. If we value our teachers, let's give them the stipends and the time that they need to learn. Our teachers want to learn. They want to know new things. And if we're not going to do it once they become teachers, then by golly, we got to do something about the educational training while they are in college. We need that pre-service training.
Patricia?
Yes, I totally agree with everything Desh is saying. And I'm trying to remember back in college and all the neat things I learned in my pre-service. I was an education major. I knew I wanted to be a teacher. But a lot of those things didn't transfer over when I became a teacher, when I actually got into the classroom. So I think we really need to drill in those professional developments for teachers that are already on campus, really targeting the teachers that are in the mid years, in their veteran years, because new teachers, well, they're coming in with that fresh knowledge. Kids that are coming out of college, they're coming in with the fresh knowledge. But the ones we really need to hone in on are the teachers that have already been there. They need that really targeted training on the things they're going to use in their classroom, not just any random thing, but something they're really going to be able to use in their classroom. Because I've sat in professional developments that were amazing, but then I get back into my classroom and it's like, how do I use this here? And it doesn't matter how hard I try to use it in my classroom, I just can't do it. Either there's no time, or it doesn't fall into the curriculum, or it's not STAR aligned, because we are in the great state of Texas, and we have that STAR test that we have to be able to master at the end of the year. So there's a lot of things that interfere with us trying to try those innovative things. So we really need professional developments that can be used in our content areas.
Okay. Well, I think we're right at time here. Rachna, I'm sorry to get you a chance to say one last word. I'll turn it over to Bob, and if he wants to include that, that's his prerogative as the schedule keeper.
Hey, Dr. Pyle, I feel like we can't get away. I mean, you're a national expert, right? You're the retiring president of the National Science Teaching Association. And I want to know, from your perspective, what do state legislatures need to know across this country that they don't get right now about STEM and science teaching? What should we be changing at that legislative level around science teaching?
Well, I'll say really up front here, any changes in curriculum or instructional innovations or textbooks or anything like that really won't add up to much of anything, any impact in the classroom until there's that professional learning. And it takes time. It takes a lot of time, and it's not a one and done, fire and forget. So speaking on the policy level, and I think it was very well articulated, there needs to be the time and the time support and financial support. There used to be programs that provided teachers with stipends for STEM preparation. Early in my career, I wrote and some grants for those and provided those things. Those are harder to come by. They go quickly, and it's a need for sustained professional learning and the opportunity for teachers, again, as was articulated in the panel here, to pass that along, to have learning communities within schools and within school districts, really to share that expertise, to share that confidence, to bring people in from the margins to really develop that expertise. You know, so it just, we can't separate teachers by their classroom anymore.
Yeah, very good. Eric, thank you very much. Rachna, Dash, Patricia, thank you guys very, very much for all that you do each and every day. So thank you so much. Lindsay, I think we have another winner or a couple more winners for the raffle from HP. And I want to thank HP again for doing this. They've been so great in terms of giving us these pro books. Lindsay?
Yes, our next two winners are Beatrice Middleton and Shauna Brookins. Congratulations, guys.
Beatrice and Shauna, thank you very much, and congratulations on those new computers, and thank you, HP. Let's bring up Nagma Murali. She is with Microsoft Technologies, Microsoft Philanthropies. Nagma, thank you very much, and you have a great panel in front of you, so I'll let you take it away. Thank you very much for being here.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Bob, for the opportunity. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation with this all-star crew that's been lined up. We really want to talk through what does it look like to partner for the future between industry and education. So first up, we've got Angelia McFarland. She's the Director, Product Marketing for Programs and Operations at Dell Technologies. So I'll see her on the camera, I'm sure, shortly, popping right up. We also have Tosin Ayubusi, who's the Diversity Business Partner at AIG Life and Retirement. We have Patrick Felder, our Senior VP for Employee Success at Salesforce. And then we have Carlos Perez, Offshore Maintenance Supervisor at Shell E&P. So very, very excited to have this conversation with all of us here today. And I'm making sure I can see all of y'all's beautiful faces. There we go. Okay. So to kick it off, I just thought we'd do some introductions and go around the panel and learn a little bit about what set you on your path to pursue a career in STEM or in your current role. I know not all of you are directly tied to STEM day to day, but are in parts of your company that support the STEM employees at your company. So I'd love to learn more about what set you on this path and a little bit about what you do. So let's start it off with Carlos, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Magna. I appreciate the opportunity. First of all, it's always a pleasure, at least for Shell, to partner up with the children's at risk. So I'll tell you, the question is, what set me to a path in career in STEM? And I'll be very honest with you. I came to the United States when I was 9 years old. I went to high school. I graduated from high school when I was 20 years old. As you can tell, I wasn't really that good in school, and they recycled me because I didn't know English. So I had to learn the English on the fly. So when I graduated from high school, I really didn't have many options, to be honest with you. I joke around and I tell people that I only have McDonald's or Jack in the Box. There's nothing wrong with that. But those are really the only options I had, because I really didn't have a mentor that allowed me the opportunity to see what was available. So I did what I could. I took something from one of the mentors that I had at one point, and I joined the Navy. And it was in the Navy that I started exploring some of the benefits of technology, or STEM as we call it. So I went to boot camp, and there they told me, look, I know you want to be electronics technician, but based on your character, maybe you should be a combat engineer. So I became a CV, a combat engineer, and I went there, and they told me, look, I think you can be a good electrician. So I said, okay, well, I learned. So I started learning about electrical. And then they told me, no, you know what, maybe you can be more of a telecommunications guy. So I learned about radios. And then I met a chief petty officer. He told me, listen, maybe you should be what we call an IT, right? Information technologies. So then I became a data network administrator. And through that process, and that took about 3 years for me to kind of realize what I wanted to be. And I noticed that the impact of technology. So I started going to school, right? I didn't know that I can go to school after high school. I thought I was done. I didn't actually, to be honest, I didn't want to go to school no more because it was so hard for me. But one step at a time, over a period of almost 20 years led me graduating with a master's of engineering management. But I tell you, the only reason why I am where I am now is because people believe in me and they wanted to give me the opportunity. And more importantly, I was able to see options. Our kids don't see the options. We don't have options, right? You teach to the test, and that's all they can see. They get bored, right? And so when they go to college, they burn out. Then the first 2 years they don't do well, so the GPA is not as good. So then they go out to the career and they're trying to do something better, but they don't fit the profile. And I was one of them. So I believe for me, it was really, to be honest, at age 21, 22, I really didn't know that I was going to be in STEM.
Thank you, Carlos. What a beautiful story, just to understand what the pitfalls were in your journey. And I think we're going to address some of that in the coming questions too. So I'd love to dive in deeper. But first, I want to hear a little bit more from the rest of our panelists on what set them on their path to this career in STEM or STEM related field. Angelia, could you share a little bit about your journey?
Hi, Nagma, thank you. I was really blessed in that I had parents. So my mother attended community college, and she was a medical technologist her whole career. I think she was a medical technologist for like 40 years. She's now retired. My father went to the military, and in the military, he did communications, electronics, and he came out of the military at a time in the 60s where there were certain companies who were committed to diversity and to driving diversity in the ranks. And so first at NCR and then at Xerox, you'd have to hear him tell the stories. They're actually great stories about how he got into those organizations. And so he was a copier technician his entire career. And so I was always around STEM. The other point that I think helped me get into STEM, and one of the ladies in a previous panel said it, I think it was Shane, is I was never stopped from doing things. I would go to work with my mother. Like I couldn't do a medical test for someone, but I was right there sitting there watching her. My father would have me using my hands, doing all manner of stuff. And so it ingrained in me at an early age that I could do whatever I wanted to do. And so when that came, whenever anybody would bring something to me at school, if I couldn't get it, it wasn't an issue of me not being able to get it, because that just didn't register in my brain, right? It's like, I just haven't gotten it yet. What do I need to do? And so because of that, I think that was why it was never an issue that STEM I was never afraid of it. And so I ended up, and technically I don't have a STEM degree. I'm a marketing person in a STEM field. So.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And I can see already the connections between your story and Carlos's story in terms of having the opportunity to see examples, right? And what that can look like for someone who maybe doesn't have those examples growing up, and for someone who does. And both y'all have ended up in a related field, and that's amazing. So thank you. Also, I love the nod to the power of the yet. As a former teacher, I appreciate that. We just got to add yet to the end of anything to really shift our minds.
Yes.
Love it. All right. I would love to hear from Tosin. Tosin, tell us a little bit about your journey into STEM.
Thank you, Nagma. And good afternoon. Hello. Great to see you all. So my name is Tosin Ayabusi. And when I think about my journey, I'm not a STEM professional, but I could still relate to a lot of the stories that I'm hearing, and that what was the inspiration that helped me on my path. And, I think, Carlos, that's a great story. I can somewhat identify with struggles earlier on because I think of my background, and I faced a lot of challenges, I would say, in junior high and K through 12. But I would say that my saving grace was making it to college and going to Florida A&M University here in Florida, where I am located, has been one of the most life-changing experiences that I could have ever had and asked for. It has really been catalytic in my growth and essentially my paradigm into just my outlook and my future and my professional career. I would say that being immersed in the School of Business at Florida A&M University was the first time that I have been around, I would say, from an academic perspective. And for those of you who are not familiar, Florida A&M University is an HBCU. And that was the first time I was exposed to competitiveness from an academic perspective. And what that did to me was essentially propel me and inspire me to want to compete academically. And that was the story. I would say that was the precipice of me being on the burgeoning of my career. From there, I've had the opportunity to work within retail. And within the retail space, I saw it as my duty to want to give back. I actually started at Macy's as an operational manager within the executive development program. And I got exposure to a lot of young professionals, a lot of which who didn't necessarily have college degrees or the professional acumen that will be needed for them to compete with a lot of careers and a really lucrative career path, if you will. So I became a learning and development professional, more specifically a focus on leadership development. And since then, I've continued to just grow in my career to the point where I found myself working in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space with a lot of programs as well as extracurricular activities from an ERG perspective, or even learning and development, where learning and development and DE&I has essentially crossed hairs. So that's where I am now. I currently work for AIG as a diversity business partner, but the core tenets and I would say a lot of my value proposition essentially stems back to what are those catalytic experiences for younger professionals, as well as a lot of individuals who may not see themselves in a space where they would have to compete or see themselves as having to compete in essentially the job environment. So a lot of that has really just kind of embedded itself into who I am today, and thinking through ways that we can continuously help propel those who do not see themselves in those spaces and let them know that they ultimately have a place and they belong.
Amazing. Thank you, Tosin, for sharing and continuing on this pattern of talking through envisioning yourself and seeing opportunities in STEM as being a key factor in developing our youth into this field. I know that Patrick shared with me offline that he might be having some tech troubles, which is why we can't see him, but I do want to give him an opportunity if he can try audio on and let us hear a little bit about his journey into STEM. Thanks, Patrick.
Okay.
Oh, Patrick, it's a really spotty, so unfortunately we can't hear you very smoothly. Why don't you try adjusting settings maybe, and we'll try again in a little bit. Yeah. Okay. All right, cool.
Is that better? Is that better?
Yes, that is a little better.
Okay. Sorry, everyone. I'm going to stay off camera so that I'm not bandwidth challenged. I'm actually out of the country at the moment, and so we're all slaves to internet and internet connectivity. Two things really quickly. I would say I'm not a STEM professional in the sense that I didn't have a STEM degree, but what I do from a leadership perspective is I work with organizations. So Dell before this, and now with Salesforce, and I work in human resources. And right now I am responsible for all of technology engineering for Salesforce from a human resources perspective. My, entry into STEM really started with my younger brother, who was an electrical engineer from Clark, Atlanta. And he started his career working with General Motors. And as a young HR professional, I kind of was always fascinated by technology and kind of being close to it. And then you kind of fast forward, working with a lot of organizations globally. We are trying to solve so many talent problems in the world right now. And every company is a technology company. And so STEM careers will touch everything that we do for the next, decade or even longer. It's going to touch everything we do because technology now is a part of every aspect of every company, be it your local dentist, all the way up to a Fortune, 10 company. And so it's a part of that. The second thing I will tell you is my son is 12. And last week we spent time at NASA at a STEM camp for him. And the things he was learning and the exposure that he got really got him excited. And he's kind of what I would consider to be my little professor, a budding engineer. And so I'm very, very close to that too, because I can see for him, it's going to be a part of his life. And then my daughter, who's 8, also, we're trying to get her involved in science and STEM, because I think, again, it is where the future is going to be headed. And so for all of us that are Black and brown, it's important that we make sure that we get plugged into it. And my purpose right now is to solve talent problems. That's what I do all day long. I solve talent problems at the executive leadership level, all the way down to the entry level. And so it is a part of it.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you, Patrick, for sharing and for making it on despite being out of the country. So, I love the diversity within this panel and our experiences that we all bring. I hear folks who are more on the HR side of things, folks who are really in it in IT. I myself have a background in IT and in teaching. So I think, in the coming questions, we can really hear a little more from that perspective. And so the next direction I think we should go in is, what are some of the ways that school systems can prepare students for real world applications of STEM in research and industry? And really I've heard, across today's whole event, from an early age being a really important part of things. So any thoughts from y'all? I'm going to make it open to anyone on the panel on what can school systems do to really prepare students for these real world applications of STEM?
Yeah, Maya, I can take that one for now. So things change all the time, especially in technology. Within 6-7 months now, whatever you learn, throw it out of the window because there's something else coming at you and you have to learn. So the school systems will support educators by allowing them to pursue an open-ended projects, right? Just throw something out there so the students can actually learn something and spark that talent that they don't know they have, rather than teaching to the test. I think that's probably the outcome of the learning, but it's very hard for you to learn if you're constantly studying for a test, as opposed to sparking the talent that many of us don't know. experience is everything. Experience is absolutely everything. And I think that if you apply the efforts to give the students the experience, it can spark a child's interest and change the trajectory of their lives. I mean, it happened to me. So I think having curriculum or just experiences outside the classroom are crucial, such as trips to the museums or other cultural venues, right? Like maybe, because if you don't make the effort, especially within our community, they may not be able to have those experiences because they lack the income. You know, also within Shell, we do offer free admission to the Houston Museum of Natural Science on the first Thursday of each month. We also partner with National Society of Black Engineers, which is a summer engineering program for kids. It's a 3-week program to expose students to exciting projects so you can spark that, and they work very closely with volunteers. So I think that the main thing is to give the students the experience. Now within Shell, we do have a website that we call the Energize Your Future with Shell. And I encourage you to go and look into it, because you can find some of the resources that you can use in your classroom to give the students the opportunity to experience some of the challenges or some of the projects that we may be working in oil and gas, or just in STEM in general.
Now, I have an opinion on that as well. I am not a tech professional, so I don't have a tech degree, but I've been in tech my entire career. And I've also been very involved in volunteering in the school systems. That's kind of one of my heart projects. And so marrying the two, this is a problem that we don't have the answer to. The school system was fundamentally developed for a different era. It was not developed for the era that we are moving into. And I'm not going to say it needs to be torn down and built back up. I know some people are of that mindset. I do think it is time for it to evolve into what we need it to be for the future. Some of the things that Carlos mentioned is it is a completely different way of learning. When you don't know the answer, see, we teach answers we know. These are the answers, kids. We want you to open up your brain. We're going to pour them in. We don't know the answers to a lot of the problems that we're moving into. And so the things that we're trying to teach them are the tools they need to find those answers. That is a fundamentally different education model than the education model that we have today. I think that corporations have not only the capacity, but the responsibility to help support that financially, to help support that in programs similar to, I'm a board member for Austin Partners in Education, and they participate, they're a partner in some of the P-TECH implementations here in Austin. So things like P-TECH, where the corporation comes in and they build these labs and they build these capabilities, and they partner with either a state agency or what have you, to bring real world experiences to these students and then give them jobs, entry-level jobs when they come out. So, I mean, that's a model. It may not be the model, but it is a model that says, hey, maybe what we were doing needs to change and we need to evolve to something else.
Yeah, I'd also like to chime in on that. Angela, I think you summed it up perfectly. And you also referenced just being able to solve problems that we cannot necessarily foresee because of our dynamic landscape and how things are changing. And I think a great example of that is what we've just seen with the pandemic, right? And having these same conversations in 2019, we couldn't have told you what's to come in 2020. And I think that essentially has exacerbated certain issues, but I think this also have just really expanded as a society, our capacity for creativity. And one of the most unique phenomena that we've seen that has been talked about a lot as a result of the pandemic was the phenomena of the digital divide that was existing in a lot of underserved communities' homes. And when we talk about the digital divide, this is essentially speaking to the lack of access to technology, whether it's computers or Wi-Fi within a home. And as a result, what this does is essentially stifles not only engagement, but also academic access and access to extracurricular activities. So going back to that piece of just creativity and what we've seen in creativity, I came across a reference of the Chicago City public school system and what they did in response to the growing phenomena of the digital divide. And what we saw from the Chicago City Public School was a program that was created called Chicago Connect. And with Chicago Connect, this was a program that was created to essentially afford access to underserved families to have access to free Wi-Fi, free high-speed Wi-Fi. And this was very impactful, not only for the families, but for the students within the Chicago City public school area. And as a result, there was just a groundswell of support from corporations. I believe over 35 corporations got involved into this initiative, providing support for over 40,000 families within the Chicago City public school system. So I think that goes back to just the capacity for creativity. Again, we cannot foresee what's going to happen, but we do know, and I think it was a test and a show of results as a result of the pandemic, of a stimuli or a situation that we're faced up against, and just what we'll do in response to that. So I think that was just a good example, and we'll have to anticipate and apply that logic going forward because we don't know what's to come.
Yeah, thank you, Tosin. And I love that this idea of creativity kind of goes back in circle to what Carlos was saying earlier about the importance of being agile and giving open-ended projects. I know from being a teacher in the classroom that it can be so difficult to try to give students what you think they need, the experiences they need, and also meet the metrics that your administration is requiring from you. And I think what I heard from you, Angelia, really speaks to that point of let's make sure we're partnering with folks in perhaps models like P-TECH. I know with Microsoft Teams, we bring volunteers into the classroom to give students that exposure to computer science educators in industry. So there are lots of opportunities out there. And I think what all of you on this session here today bring is this desire to learn more about what all is going on in the space. So yeah, really, really thoughtful responses. Thank you so much. We only have a few minutes left, which is so hard to believe. So I'm gonna skip ahead to a question that I think is really important and part of what I do day to day. And I think we'll close on this. So I'd love to hear thoughts from y'all, and maybe we'll start with Patrick since I know you didn't get a chance to respond to this last one. But what do you think companies and professionals within STEM industries can do to really ensure the success and retention of young STEM professionals? So what are your companies doing, or what do you think needs to be done in order to keep folks in the field and particularly young STEM professionals of color? So I'm curious to hear, and I know we have some diversity, equity, inclusion folks on the call too, so I'm curious to hear from that. But Patrick, if you want to kick it off, I appreciate it.
Sure. I think there's a couple things. Number one, we have to be able to partner deeper into our organizations with succession planning and retention planning. We don't do that very well. We do a very good job of hiring and bringing folks in. And Angelia knows this from our time together at Dell. We have to dig deeper into their organization to kind of continue to grow people's careers and make it very intentional, especially for our communities of color through ERGs and also through programs. So those things have to start very, very early. You have about 2 years when you bring in young talent to get them engaged with leaders, engaged with the company, and really start their careers. And when they hit about 4 to 5 years, sometimes careers begin to kind of slow down. And so we've got to be able to have programming in place at a company level that's intentional about continuing to grow their careers and their development. That includes projects, that includes leadership development, and continuing to kind of push their careers forward. And so companies have to be very intentional at that mid-career level and early management level to continue to grow careers for folks in those communities and leverage our ERGs because everybody from a leadership perspective, human resources, DEI, all have to work together to move those things forward.
Awesome, Patrick. Thank you so much. I know the rest of the panel probably has thoughts on this, and I wish we had more time, but we do need to wrap it up. So if you do want to pop your information in the chat so we can keep this conversation going. I know I'm going to connect with many of you on LinkedIn so that we can be a part of each other's networks and all work together towards bringing this space to our students and to our schools in an effective and holistic way. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to moderate today, and I'm excited to see what's next.
Thank you, Nagma.
Nagma, before you
Great
go,
job,
I need to ask you a question, Nagma, and I think this is, I'm sure everyone will have an answer to this, but I want to ask you, so you're at Microsoft Philanthropies, and I started this session this morning when talking about the need for collaboration for the corporate tech sector to work with nonprofits around systems change, right? How could we collaborate to change the system? And historically, as you guys know, corporations are quick to do lobbying when there are financial incentives for them and tax breaks and so forth. But very rarely, when it comes to sort of the development of the workforce and that we talked about talent or the school systems, but maybe we're at a change here, right? Do you think we're at a time where we're going to see the corporate tech sector say, yes, let's work on systems change because this is having an impact on our future?
Yeah, definitely. I think policy is a huge part of what we do. We have an amazing person who's been advocating, at least in my field directly with computer science education, to really make sure that digital scorecards are available for every state, that we know what policies are in place for CSED across the country, and that we are advocating consistently to make sure that it is emphasized, that schools understand the importance of it, and that the resources are given to those schools to actually implement that curriculum that we know is so important. So yeah, I completely agree. I think systems change is important. It's important to not just offer resources for folks on the ground level day to day, but also work with our state and government teams and other parts of Microsoft to achieve that. So I love to keep the conversation going and connect you with folks if you'd like to meet them.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the interesting things, right, is that STEM seems to cross party lines, right? I mean, whether you're in a red state or a blue state, we could all agree. And look, California and Texas, we could all agree STEM is so important. So listen, Nagma, thank you for your panel. Carlos, Angelia, Tosin, thank you guys. Patrick, very, very much for the work that you're doing.
The main thing is to reach out to corporations, because we want to help, but a lot of times we don't get the opportunity to help, right?
Yeah.
Within the oil and gas, we have many different nonprofit organizations that have curriculums already approved by the state of Texas to just put it on the table so we can teach our students. And the other thing is you need to engage not only at a high school, but middle school too, because that's when, or elementary school as early as that, because a lot of times when you get to high school, it's too late.
Yeah, very good. Carlos, thank you. Thank you all very, very much. And I think we're ready for another raffle. And so, Lindsay, who's our big winner this time?
Our next two winners are Luce Freestone and Jake Rudisil.
Luce and Jake, and the HP Elite, a Chromebook Enterprise. Well, that's very, very exciting. That's a pretty good one. Wow, very, very good. Thank you very much. Thanks to HP again for this. Let's go. So we're going to HP right now, Partnership in Action. And we have a team from HP, Jan, Layla, Julia, Pamela, and they get a full 10 minutes to talk about Partnership in Action. So I think that's the big challenge. So take it away, guys.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Julia Lopez from the HP team. We're very glad to be here with you today in the next 10 minutes. My colleagues, John, Laila, Pamela, Nicole, will be sharing different programs and initiatives where HP partners and collaborates to support education, community programs, and professional organizations. And we will have some time for Q&A at the end. Thanks. So this is our planned agenda for today, and John will start introducing some of our participation in education initiatives.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jan Ellis, and I am so excited to be here. I just want to start off with that. This is my second year, so I really think that this program is going to be impactful. And I want to take this moment to highlight how HP in Action partners in participation with education. So a brief summary statement is that HP's education programs build on the strength of our innovation to deliver cutting-edge computing and digital printing solutions and outcome-based learning experiences that support remote learning and help people thrive in a rapidly evolving digital world. So when we talk about the technical divide and how there are gaps in providing resources to children at risk and other areas that might have technological disadvantages, HP takes a firm stance in providing those resources to children and families in need. And that looks like helping communities upgrade their old PCs through our refresh program, and also continuing to offer free digital courses through HP Life to help those students out, as well as young adults that are interested in the STEM field. And that is all a part of the HP Foundation that offers the modules and the support skills around entrepreneurship and business development. And it's expanding into various areas. And those sessions are set up specifically to give teachers and other learners the resources they need, because there is a very increasing demand for that, as you all are aware, especially with events such as the pandemic. HP is very big on enablement and providing these resources at no cost, because our heart really is in helping those in need. We also provide resources such as giving back by having families have access to Time Magazine for Kids, that content for free at no cost. And then we also have various programs and partnerships that we have involvement across the global organization, such as First Robotics, Free Geek, Young Women, Free Geek, Young Women's College Prep Academy, Women in Tech, and we offer guest speakers for STEM classes such as myself. Prior to this event, I was working with some STEM students to allow them some of the resources to help them out, because I was one of those kids. I went to a Title I school, and I'll never forget the day the principal of the STEM school came to talk to me about this opportunity and showed me some cool tech. And stuff like that has been near and dear to my heart, because it started off at the elementary school level and it's matriculated and followed me through all the way up until college and now to my professional career. So this is how HP has partnered in education across the entire company at large, and we are looking forward to opportunities like this to continue to provide that impact, and also to provide those resources not only to enable but to inspire and motivate for children and young adults such as myself who are beneficiaries to that. So with that, I would like to allow the transition into our next section, and I appreciate your time and attention.
Yep. Hi everyone. My name is Layla. I'm with HP as well, and I'm here to talk about what HP does for community impact. We have a bunch of links listed here, and that should be provided in the document from Children at Risk. But the three that I wanted to highlight are my favorites, which is HP Life, the HP Printables link, and the Be a Changemaker. The HP Life website is a really awesome program. It's free courses and skills training for entrepreneurs, business owners, and that's all part of the HP Foundation. They have courses on communication, startups, finance, marketing, and operations. So I think it's just a really great opportunity to kind of learn in all these different areas, and it's all completely free. The HP Printables link, which has things, anything from coloring sheets, Camp Goldie Blocks, which are like STEM DIY learning activities that you can do, productivity sheets, calendars, everything like that. I think these are really awesome for kids in the summertime, and then as well as just kind of remote learning. You can do these kind of DIY science experiments at home to kind of keep you busy during COVID and things like that. And then the last one was the Be a Changemaker, and that's online training which utilizes the HP Life website and those classes to kind of do projects, and you can browse their website and see all the global projects that are going on right now, which is really awesome. So those are kind of my top favorite links here. Everything is listed and you should be able to browse those on your own time.
Hi, I'm Pam Morrison, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our diverse engineering partnerships. And this is really something that HP has leaned into since 2019. Once we separated from HP Enterprises, it took us a little bit to get back into these partnerships, but over the last 3-4 years, we've really upped our game with all three of these partnerships: NSBE, SWE, and SHEP. NSBE is the National Society of Black Engineers, SWE is the Society of Women Engineers, and SHEP is the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. And so all three of these groups, we have both a corporate partnership with, as well as an internal HP group which gives us the opportunity both to use the partnerships for recruiting, but also to allow for career development for our employees. Right now, we actually have a mentoring program going on across all 3 programs with our interns. We have both high school and college interns that come in. And so this is a great opportunity to help make sure that our diverse candidates are getting connected with professionals that look like them and have had experiences like them to help mentor them through from internship into full-time employees. And part of the reason we partner with these groups is the great work that they do. All 3 organizations provide more than $1 million in scholarship funding. That starts with freshman scholarships. So your rising seniors are very eligible for these awards. And it's a great opportunity to help offset the cost of college, especially for first generation rising college students, and they can continue to apply for them year after year. Also, all of these organizations have great community involvement, and I've highlighted a couple of things here, particularly because they're happening in Texas this year. One is SWE's Invent It, Build It program. This always happens in the fall with their annual conference. This year, the annual conference is going to be in Houston. And so this is a great opportunity for students grades 7 through 12 and their parents to get exposed to engineering. The students will have a program during the day where they come in and they quite literally invent and build something to solve an open-ended challenge. At the same time, the parents get the opportunity to sit down with female engineers and understand what is it that we do, answer questions about what the college process is and, you know, how this career progression is compared to that of like teachers or nurses or areas that may be more common to encourage your daughters to go to. So it's a really, really great opportunity. It is completely free and registration is open. So the links are there and it's something I encourage you. HP will be present and volunteering at that event this fall. And then also as teachers, there's programs like SWE Next, which is a way for middle school and high school students to get a club together and have a connection with a professional engineer. And I believe NSBE is also starting programs very similar to this year. I just didn't get their link in here in time. So, you know, great opportunities in addition to just, you know, organizations that have abundance of resource. They all offer teacher registrations at a very low and reasonable price and gives you access to their resources as well. So, you know, these are important partnerships, both for us in the community and also for helping to grow and retain our talent internally. And I'm going to kick it over for, I think Layla was going to share for a few minutes, or Yulia.
Yeah, I was just going to give kind of a quick background, I guess, into some of those partnerships for diversity. I served on my university's Society of Asian Scientists and Engineers, which HP has an internal chapter for, as well as on the board of my university's SHIP. And I just wanted to kind of give a testimony to how impactful that was. As a young college student, I received a lot of mentorship. And then as I got older throughout my college career, being able to give back to the community, we did a lot of outreach things. We did a lot of mentorship. We did a lot of guidance for young, you know, not just girls, but boys as well, just getting them into STEM and just raising awareness and exposure to people that maybe didn't have any science or technology in their families or anything like that. So just getting that out there was so important and meaningful to me personally.
Thank you guys very much. We so appreciate the partnership with HP. And obviously this is something that we want more of our technology industry partners to be doing. So thank you guys very, very much. And Yulia, thank you so much for putting it all together. So thank you so much. Very good. And with that, I think we have one more raffle from HP right before we go to the senator. And Lindsay, do you have a winner?
Yes, our last 2 winners are Lee Warren and Louis Moser.
Lee and Louis, winners from HP. Congratulations on that. So another couple of laptops to you guys. All right, hey, let's take it just to finish up for the day. We want to finish up on a policy note. And Senator Cesar Blanco from the El Paso area did a quick little thing for us on some of the work that he's doing around STEM and policy at the state legislative level. I'll also use this opportunity for you guys to make sure you fill out your surveys. to see how well we did and things we should be changing. Again, I want to thank Bree for all her hard work, as this is her last day, and the whole team for the work that they've done. So send your feedback to this event, and we still have a couple of raffles for those that are filling out those surveys. But let's go to the video from Senator Blanco, and then I'll come right back for some final notes.
Hi, I'm Cesar Blanco, your Texas State Senator. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Children at Risk for hosting this wonderful summit, as well as the partners who made today possible. The state of Texas is very grateful for the work that you all do to improve the quality of life of children. You've heard from many leaders in STEM industry today, and I hope that you leave feeling inspired as we work together to improve access to STEM education for all students in our community. It's no secret that the pandemic left many students behind, undoing years of improvements in reading and math and creating major gaps in student learning that will impact students for many years. This loss is a major problem that could have a negative impact on the economy as well as students' lifetime income if it's not addressed. But because of the extraordinary work of educators and leaders that are working for our public schools, Texas students' standardized test scores in reading and math have moved closer to pre-pandemic levels after falling to levels not seen in a decade the year before. Our schools are so lucky to have people like you who are dedicated to supporting our children. But we all know that there's more work to be done. Myself and the rest of my colleagues in the Texas legislature are committed to combating learning loss and providing students with proper resources to prepare the next generation of STEM professionals. Just last session, we passed Senate Bill 1, increase in state's funding for public schools by $3.2 billion and providing $60 million for supplemental special education services. We also added $664 million for targeted programs to help students and schools that were affected by the pandemic. This is going to ensure that students are college ready, and it is a challenge that spans all levels of education. Last session, we found that a student college readiness standards are algebra related, but Texas stopped requiring Algebra 2 back in 2014. In response, my office introduced a bill to reinstate the completion of requirements of Algebra 2 because, require or not, Algebra 2 provides an avenue to college for many students who are unsure of their plans after high school. Moving forward, I think we have to work to make sure that we are creating STEM pathways that are accessible to all children. As Texas continues to push to build STEM literacy, multilingual students face systemic barriers in accessing high-quality instruction and entering the workforce. This stems from available resources, teacher efficacy, and language barriers in the classroom. Last session, I proudly co-authored Senate Bill 560 requiring the TEA, the Texas Workforce Commission, and the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to improve bilingual education in Texas. There are over 1 million English learners in Texas, and Latinos make up more than half of the state's student population. In establishing a collaborative and coordinated strategy, Texas schools will be better equipped to ensure Spanish-speaking students overcome the COVID learning loss and receive the quality education they need for success in school and the future in the workforce. Regardless of language barriers or socioeconomic status, all Texas children should have the same access to resources necessary for a quality STEM education in order to shape tomorrow's workforce and really to change the world. Every person in this room is a major player in ensuring that this is not a wish list, but a reality. There are simply not enough words to thank each and every one of you for all the work that you do every day to make a difference in our students' education. Your hard work and your commitment is continuously improving the lives of students in our community and making sure that we're setting them up to be the best and the next generation of leaders in the STEM industry. I wish the educators in the room the absolute best in this next school year, and I look forward to working with Children at Risk and TEA leading up to the 88th legislative session in order to fight for equity in STEM programs, especially for underserved kids and bilingual English language learners. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Senator Blanco. We appreciate you coming out and doing this for us. I want to thank everyone who's been a part of this. And I want to sort of reconnect with those words that I mentioned at the beginning. It's all about equity. How do we make sure that every single child has this opportunity to be engaged with STEM, to be successful? That's good. That's one of the real keys, scaling up some of these great programs, changing policy so it's at a systems level, and finally collaborating all nonprofits, school districts, and the tech sector, the for-profit tech sector, all working together to make sure that we can all be successful. This is a key moment. And earlier in one of these sessions, someone said, all companies, I think it was Guillermo said, all companies need to be tech companies. I think all of us, nonprofits and all, as we move into the future, we all need to be tech organizations. And it's important that we have that workforce, and it's important that all of our children are ready to be part of that workforce. So thank you all very, very much. I think there's a lot of ways to get involved, a lot of stuff going on. We have our big education summit coming up later in the year, September 9th. We'd love for you to be a part of that. And we'll get into some of these issues in deeper ways. And here's the little survey monkey for you that we hope that you can fill out and give us some ideas. And if you fill it out, you may indeed get one of these HP Pro books. So thank you all very much. Thanks for hanging in there with us. Thanks to the whole staff at Children at Risk and to everyone at the Texas Family Leadership Council. Once again, thanks to Shell, our big sponsor on this, and then also to HP, AIG, and Amazon. Thank you all very much. Have a great day. Take care.